Are you okay? I'm letting them in.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this Friday, March 10th, as we take our 22nd voyage through time and space with the legendary Bob Rogers. Thank you again for joining us. We'll get started right at 12 o'clock. Welcome to those just joining us. We are here at Zeitgeist Spirit of the Time, episode 22, and we will get started right at the top of the hour with Bob Rogers. Welcome to those just joining us. So happy to have you here on this Friday, March 10th, and we will get started right at the top of the hour with the Spirit of the Time. Welcome to the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We are on our 22nd episode, flying through time and space with our fellow colleagues and icons. We are with the legendary Bob Rogers today, and we'll get started right at the top of the hour. For those just joining us, welcome to Zeitgeist Spirit of the Time. We are here with Bob Rogers this Friday, and we will get started right at 12 o'clock. Stay tuned. Thank you again for joining us today on the Spirit of the Time. We will get started very shortly. Welcome to Zeitgeist Design and Production. I'm Becky Kiefer, Studio Director. Time travel is the ultimate immersive experience. VR, AR, and the metaverse all pale in comparison to the notion of sailing across the seas of time and space. Here in the Zeitgeist Creative Studio, aka RNJ's Time Travel Emporium, imagination rules and time is always of the essence. This is where immersion artists Ryan Harmon and Jolan Cicero study the present, study the past, and spend the present envisioning the future story dwelling and what we call UXIRL, user experiences in real life. The Spirit of the Time Zoomcast offers a sneak peek behind the themes. Each month, we move you without a ride system, inviting one incredibly talented and influential colleague aboard our time machine. We set the controls for milestone moments in that person's career and attempt to unravel the mystery of what makes a guest experience timely yet timeless. And because we're live, you can type questions into the chat box and our passenger will answer them off the record after the hour. Climbing aboard our time machine today is one of the most respected and honored individuals in our industry. Bob Rogers is an Oscar-nominated writer, director, producer, and creative visionary of media-rich experiences at Disney theme parks, world's fairs and expos, museums, space centers, visitor centers, and brand homes around the globe. For the past 42 years, he's been leading the talented team at his namesake, BRC Imagination Arts, as they continued his legacy of combining scholarship with showmanship for dozens of award-winning location-based projects. It's now my pleasure to introduce our time machine pilots, Zeitgeist President and Chief Creative Officer, Ryan Harmon, and Zeitgeist Executive Vice President and Chief Art Director, Jolan Cicero, along with the man who holds the Guinness World Record for writing and co-producing the longest-running daily screening of a film in the same theater, which is the 18-minute Impressions de France film at Epcot for almost 41 years. Bob Rogers.
Yay, we are here. You don't see us? Oh, we're not. Oh, we don't see you. There we are. Can you see us now?
Okay, so we just returned the controls of the time machine to 1938 because in honor of Bob, the Academy Awards
This Sunday.
and the LA weather.
Yeah.
We went back to the 10th Academy Awards in 1938.
85 years ago.
Because it was rained out.
It was rained out.
They had to postpone it. And then it happened on this day.
Well,
the 10th.
and our good friend Walt Disney won 2 Oscars that night. Two. He won one for a short film and he won one for new technology.
Multiple
yeah.
changed the industry.
Hey, I have a joke for you.
Okay,
Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field. Hi, Bob.
So the controls.
Well, first let's thank Bob for coming to our show today. I've had the opportunity to work with Bob on 2 different projects throughout the years, which I always enjoyed being part of the BRC family. And it's truly an honor to have you here today, being a Thea Lifetime Achievement Award winner and all the other kudos you've been given throughout the decades. So we're very excited. So why don't we set the machine for 1955, not for the reason everybody thinks.
Okay.
So we'll move to 1955, and it looks like we're seeing young Bob Rogers in a coonskin cap, and he's asking his mom for a movie camera or something. Bob, tell us what's going on here in are we in Walnut Creek?
In the winter of everybody started with an inspiration someplace. This was mine.
Right. Okay.
In the winter of 1954 to 55, the Disneyland television show, that was its title at the time, Disneyland.
Right.
It screened one of the first miniseries, 3 parts on Davy Crockett. And very soon after that, every kid in America had a coonskin cap. Yeah. And what I wanted was, I thought I wanted to look at that movie or that TV show multiple times. And so in order to be able to do that, I suggested to my parents that we refilm the thing with me as Davy Crockett, so that I would always have a copy I could show. We got as far as the first scene, and that broke down over a casting dispute between myself and my little brother. But that sort of started things off. So did, frankly, the Disneyland television show for a whole generation.
Yeah.
Really, especially episodes like the Plausible Impossible, or the Story of the Animated Drawing, or Tricks of Our Trade.
Right.
Those episodes in particular, where Uncle Walt sat there and in a very adult-like way, explained to us how animation and filmmaking was done, how sound works with films, how sound effects work with films, how to make animation, what is a multi-plane camera, how it works. I mean, I was like 5, 6 years old, and here's the communications person of the century describing to me, teaching me how to do the trade I eventually went into. That's
masterclass.
That was quite something. It's amazing what happens when you take a child and give them sort of an adult respect in terms of what you're teaching them. It's amazing what can happen with that.
Yeah. Wow. So so you moved to Tustin that year, down from Walnut Creek.
We arrived in Tustin from Walnut Creek about a month after Disneyland opened.
Wow.
And the birthdays were a big deal in my house. This is how I fell in love with Disneyland. I was born February 3rd. My brother was born February 5th, and my sister was born February 15th. So all within a 2-week period. So my parents eventually figured out what was causing it, and thereafter my dad left town every May. But the way that they economized on the birthday parties was they gave one party for the 3 of us, which was taking all 3 of us to Disneyland. And ultimately, they always took us on a day when it just poured rain.
Yeah. So
I developed a kind of a love of Disneyland in the rain. And also, I don't know if you've got that picture of, it's funny, my reaction to Disneyland was just different. There was my sister in the front seat, my brother next to me, and me in the red shirt, serious as all get out, probably trying to calculate the hourly capacity of the Alice in Wonderland ride there. But I always took Disneyland seriously. Disneyland to me always looked like a model train set in a scale of 1 to 1.
Yep.
And it absolutely fascinated me. I wanted to know how it worked. And so those were some of the early influences. Everybody has something like that. And that just happens to be mine.
Yeah. And you were also fascinated with magic and filmmaking. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the magic, just I just enjoyed performing, and I wasn't a very good actor, but I figured out if I had some magic tricks, maybe that could fascinate them. That eventually led to here I am about to take a raw egg and accidentally leave a stain on my mother's carpet with a trick that didn't work. But everybody started out doing something. They started out doing puppets. They started out doing shows in the garage. They start one way or another. Everybody starts out like that. And it's funny how, every single person who's probably looking in on this call has a similar story. And they're all interesting and good because it led to an interest in this thing.
Yeah.
That one allowed me to, my senior year in high school, I auditioned for the magic shop at Disneyland. They started giving me tricks, and I knew how to do every trick under the counter. So they gave me a job there, and that was my chance to answer some of my questions. How did Disneyland work? I, of course, worked at the magic shop. I got a piece of advice there that is one of the best pieces of advice I got in my life. I was complaining to one of the senior magicians that the little kids would come and buy the trick that I just demonstrated. They'd buy it for $1, go around the corner, open it up, read the instructions, and come back and expose me in front of the next group. And I said, that just really spoils the magic. And he said, Bob, think about what you're doing here. This is not the magic temple. This is the magic shop. People come here not to find out how magical you are. They come here hoping you are going to help them find some magic within themselves.
Ooh,
Isn't that what all of us need to be thinking about with all of our guests and visitors? How do we, rather than prove to them how wonderful we are, how creative, how do we cause them to find the magic within themselves? That's a life learning that came right out of the magic shop at on Main Street.
Yeah.
And that's been a theme through so much of your work. And as we continue on with our discussions today, I know you're going to touch on it some more. But before we leave this early movie making, you talked a little bit about the magic of film editing. And I thought you had some really great insights into how you mentioned Erwin S. Porter, who I never knew invented editing.
Edwin S. Porter. Yeah. The movie camera and the movie projector were invented and perfected somewhere around 1890. And we don't track the origins of film from there. They were doing films and charging admission, but it wasn't film until Edwin S. Porter invented something called editing with The Great Train Robbery. And the whole idea is that you can be showing a picture of one thing and cut to another, and they may have been shot weeks and months apart and miles apart, but the audience will connect the two. So that's really a magic trick. Yeah. That's a magic trick. That at base, filmmaking is a magic trick. And the example you give is you watch somebody walk across a big empty field over toward a building about the size of an outhouse. They pause at the door, look both directions to make sure nobody's watching, open the door and go in, and you cut to the interior of a warehouse where they've just come in through the door. And of course, the size disparity makes that a great joke. But at the same time, people can't help it. They will see that as being the interior of that little tiny exterior building that they saw. That's a magic trick. And that's the basic idea behind film, is causing people to see something that didn't really happen. And as a storytelling tool, that's wonderful. And it's no mistake that the earliest filmmakers, some of the earliest filmmakers were magicians. The Lumiere brothers, for example.
Yeah, that's true. So jumping back to, we see you here at Disneyland, and I thought you were working, in the magic shop and retail, but it looks like you're working in some places on the weekends where you're not supposed to be. What's going on there?
Yeah, that was, again, I was fascinated. I wanted to know things. So I would volunteer on my days off. I'd call in and I'd volunteer. I'll say, hey, look, I'm qualified for retail and cash drawer anywhere on the park. I'll come in and work on my day off. If you're shorthanded, I'll work any place except the magic shop. So they moved me around all over the place, and that gave me a chance I worked in basically every retail location that they have. And on occasion, I would go down to wardrobe, turn in my magician's uniform, or my costume, which they didn't see very often. And they would mistake it. And I would say, I'm supposed to work on Main Street today. And instead of giving me an outfit for the Emporium, they'd give me one for the horse cars or the train. And I would cheerfully say nothing and go help people on and off. I also, in my time off within the park, I would go exploring. I wanted to know things. I mean, for example, when somebody's juggling balls, when they stop juggling it, all those balls have to come down. They've got to go someplace. So Pirates of the Caribbean, the bottom level is full of water. It's full. And there are all these waterfalls with more water headed to the bottom. So when they turn the pumps off at night, why doesn't the bottom level flood? What in 1968, this was 1968, what causes all the pirates to sing in sync? We haven't been to the moon yet.
Yeah.
How on earth does this thing work? And I knocked on the back door of the control room and found a guy that was watching the machinery work, and he was kind enough to explain the whole thing to me. Oh my God, the world's biggest cuckoo clock. It was astounding how they did that. That's a subject for a much longer discussion somewhere else. But it was amazing to listen to see that stuff. How do the horses that were drawing the horse cars up and down Main Street, how did they get from Main Street to their stable, which was behind Small World, without leaving evidence of their passage in Fantasyland? Somewhere there had to be a maintenance facility for 19th century steam locomotives. What did that look like? How did they know how many hamburger buns they would need a week from Tuesday?
So how did your
here's a good one. Where does the cash go at night? This was an era when credit cards were a smaller portion of what we do. So a hell of a lot of cash. You never saw a Brinks truck pulling away. Where did that go? Fortunately, I never got to the bottom of that one, or I would have been probably really ostracized. Anyway, I got to the end of the summer, and they said, you may have heard that we're doing some new thing in a few years in Florida. Don't apply for work here. Don't apply for work there, because we've got a new thing in this company. It's called a computer. And they're going to type your name into that computer, and it's going to come up and say no rehire. That was the first time I was fired by Disney. I've now been fired by Disney 3 times, and each time told that I will never, ever be allowed to work for any part of that company ever again. 3 times.
Okay, well, 2 more.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So you left Disneyland and you went to Stanford. Pretty impressive. What were you studying at Stanford?
And were you old enough at the time?
He was 18 or 19. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to Stanford. I majored in communications. In 2 years, I got through every subject I wanted to be in, wanted to take. And I went back to my parents and I said, there's a new school that was being funded by Walt Disney's estate called Cal Arts. It's brand new. I want to transfer there. And they were heartbroken, but at least they said, at least the tuition will go down. No, it went up. And, I'm the only person, I think, in the history of the world that's used Stanford University as a prep school for art school. But it was the right thing to do, because it was, and you got to think. I mean, that's another common theme that probably everybody on this call has, is that supportive parents that supported the dream of a young person that, boy, you sure you wouldn't like to earn a nice degree before you go off and try this starving artist thing? But support at home, that's a big deal. Yeah,
that's great. So you did Cal Arts starting downtown, and then you got to move to the Valencia campus?
No, the first year, the Valencia campus wasn't ready. We were in a Catholic school for girls that had just recently closed, which was, I still have images that I try to get out of my head, because it was a Catholic school for girls, and they didn't change it much. They just brought in all of the hippies. And in those days, Cal Arts was really hippy dippy. I got to tell you. The image I wish I could get out of my head was some members of the faculty thought that we should allow nude sunbathing at the pool. So there was this image. I came around the corner one day and saw 2 older faculty members that should never be seen naked, and they're laying out at the pool deck, and right hovering over them is a statue of the Virgin Mary giving a blessing.
That's awesome.
There was some funny combinations like that.
Yeah.
And then the second year we moved up to the Valencia campus.
Oh, cool. All right.
That was a great experience. Everything was very wide open. You could get access to everybody.
Yeah.
And again, I sort of made my own curriculum. I tell a lot of young people that are starting out, I said, when you go to college, go not as a pilgrim, go as a pirate. Grab what you want and what seems meaningful and useful to you, and to hell with the rest, because they will try to feed you a bunch of stuff in college, that basically is designed to track you to become eventually a college professor. And there's one point or another when you're going to want to bail off of that line. So one of the things I did at CalArts was I was the ghostwriter, and I got co-writing credit on what turned out to be the very first textbook on cinematography. It was published in 1973, and it's still in print, a descendant. And of course, there's nothing. I was up to date on everything. I knew how to thread and use every 35 millimeter, 16 millimeter camera that was around then. And there is every single bit of knowledge in that book that I learned is a process of writing it for the professor. It's all obsolete now. The only thing that might still be current are Apple boxes and C-stands, but everything else is completely gone.
Wow.
So that's a lesson, by the way. That's a lesson, by the way. If you want a long career, be thinking about the story. The story elements tend not to change. The technology sometimes has to be relearned every 3 years. And after a while, you get hardening of the cerebellum and it gets harder. But the story stuff, kind of the same each time. I tell a lot of young people who are artists, I said, if all you know is how to draw, you will report to someone who knows what to draw. So for goodness sake, learn to draw, but strive to be the one that knows what to draw.
Right.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, I think it's so true, Bob, because the story piece most likely or should be connected to the human experience, and the human experience fundamentally doesn't change along the way. We're the same as our caveman ancestors on when it comes to all the basics.
Right, just better dressed.
Well put. Well put. Where are we going next?
Well, tell us about your film Model Railroading Unlimited. It sounds like this was your ticket to some big things.
I don't know whether that was by itself. The interesting thing is to contrast that with the Impressions du France.
Okay. Well, I was thinking that
Marty and some others saw Model Railroading Unlimited, and there were some very clever things in that. But they had me and Rick Harper, the director of that one, working together to come up with ideas for some of the films for Epcot, which had not yet been built at that point. And at one point or another, there's a couple of interesting things that come out of that. For any of the young people that are in this call, younger people, boy, that was a mistake I regret, is that Rick and I had an office at Walt Disney Imagineering, which was WDI then, right next to Randy Bright's office. And that was an office that they frequently used for visiting artists that they didn't have an office to put them in. And we were permanently assigned that room, but nobody told the front desk. So every once in a while, we would have somebody show up to use that room. And we would always say the same thing. Oh yeah, they would look confused at the door. Oh, don't worry, take a seat at the other end of the table. We won't bother you. You can sit there and we'll just work on our stuff and you work on your stuff. And over the course of the time we were developing films for Imagineering, we had this parade of amazing people that we spent 3 or 4 days with each. Herb Ryman was there. Ken O'Connor spent time there. Ward Kimball was there. Ken Anderson. And for the most part, what a stupid we were so worried we were going to screw up and lose our own jobs if we didn't focus on our own work, that we didn't take advantage of this parade of incredible people and talk with them. If I'd known then what I know now, every night we should have gone through their trash and looked for drawings, and maybe the next day ask them to sign them or something. But Ken Anderson told us the most fun, instructive retelling of the day that he accidentally burned Walt Disney's mustache off. And he told us with more depth and with more concrete information about what happened before and after that I've never seen in print anywhere. That's been written up a number of times, but you know, we should have paid a lot more attention to the old guys.
Yeah. Well, let's go back 1 second. We're going to put the machine in reverse for a second, because I think we forgot to talk about when you were a screenwriter at the studio and your infamous second firing from the Walt Disney Company.
When I was a senior at Cal Arts, I came in second in what was then the Walt Disney Film Writing Awards. The second prize. The first prize was 10 weeks at $400 a week, and second prize was $2,000. So I went into the story department and I asked the head of the story department, I don't want the $2,000. I want 10 weeks at $200 a week. Well, he had nothing to lose, so he agreed to that. And again, I was interested in what made the studio work.
Yeah.
Where's ink and paint? What's out there in the back lot? The Zorro set was still up, for crying out loud. Zorro had been off the air for a decade. But I was just wandering around, just in all kinds of things. One day I wandered over to the art morgue. I was on my way out of for lunch off campus, and I had my briefcase with me. So I went over, I said, I'm always interested in the art morgue. I'm running a little early, so why don't I go see what's there? I get to the art morgue. The door is propped open with a ceramic brick.
Okay.
There's a note on the door that says, gone to lunch, back at 1:15.
And what time was it?
Well, it's like 12.
Perfect.
So I walk into the art morgue with my briefcase in hand. Nobody's there. Here are backgrounds from Snow White and Pinocchio and all this stuff. There are stacks of black and white cells from the 1930s. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know how others feel, but I think this stuff is probably valuable. I would worry about it, leaving this door unlocked and unattended, and even posting how long you have until somebody's
to steal everything.
When I walked out, I didn't take anything, but I thought, no, it belongs here, but because that's where it should be. But just the same, that was. But anyway, so poking around where I shouldn't have been. In those days, the studio was producing films with Tim Conway and Don Knotts, in which Don Knotts sees that the skunk has gotten out onto the construction, steel structure and might fall to his death out of the skyscraper under construction. So Don Knotts takes it on himself to go out on the limb to try to rescue the skunk that doesn't want to be, it was pretty dumb stuff. Yeah. And what we found out that summer was that I couldn't write the stuff that they wanted to produce. And I was kind of a problem because I was poking around with places that didn't involve a typewriter in a room by myself. The head of the story department took time out of his day to escort this young man who was losing the first legitimate job in show business. He escorted me out with my little cardboard box, and when we got to the sidewalk, he said his parting words of encouragement were, "People like you are why we have guards at the gate." Thank you, Frank.
Wow.
That was the second time.
That's almost as good as we have computers. Do not hire. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Bob, in light of the quality and the types of films that they were making at that period,
right.
Everybody finds their own level. I started out in life thinking that I wanted to be Steven Spielberg. So far as I can tell, that job is still taken.
Yeah.
There's somebody in that job right now who's doing a reasonably good job of it. So I found out that I really didn't have quite the right talent for writing feature films. I didn't have quite the right talent for television. I took a stab at that. I was with a sitcom for a summer. Oh, wow. But in the end, everybody's good at something. And as the saying goes, the wand chooses the wizard. Mm-hmm. And while you're busy trying to do what you think you want to know, you do what Joseph Campbell calls refusal of the call. That's one of the steps in the hero's journey. Right. And for me, that was being at Disneyland and thinking this is the most fascinating place in the world, but it's not what I want to do. I'm going to go do feature films. So a refusal of the call. When Marty hired Rick and I to develop films for Epcot, I just discovered, talking with people and sort of participating in meetings, I discovered, well, hell, this is what I was put here to do. I'm good at this. And Wand chose the wizard. It wasn't the other way around.
So that's the perfect segue. We're now in 1981 and Impressions of France film. Significant in your career.
Yeah, were you an expert in French travel? And
Yeah. There was one film after another. Rick and I developed probably about 10 concepts for different films at Epcot, and they were all absolutely dreadful, and thank God none of them got made. And Marty had this way of getting to the end of a project and saying, listen, I really like what you're doing here. I really like the progress we're making, but I've got an emergency. I need you to pack this one up. We'll get back to it, but I need you to work on this other thing over here. And eventually this happened several times. We went down the hall and talked to Colin Campbell, one of the old-time artists. I said, what does this mean? And he says, oh, don't worry about a thing, guys. That means they don't like what you did, but they like you. So they're just giving you another assignment. No, you pack it up. That your project is dead. They're just being polite. Which is a nice way to do that. But anyway, so and there's the interesting contrast. Up to this point, I had produced Model Railroading Unlimited with a budget of about $50,000.
Wow.
And now suddenly I find myself on an airplane headed to a continent I've never been on, to a country I've never been to, where they speak a language I don't speak, and they use a currency that I've never used before and I'm totally unfamiliar with, where they have filmmaking traditions and culture that I'm not at all familiar with at all. And methods of accounting, etc., that I'm not familiar with. And I'm in charge of producing co-producing with Rick, and I was the writer on that thing, a project budgeted at $2.8 million.
Whoa, that's a lot.
So from $50,000 to 2.8, and it really, it speaks well to something that I've tried to make part of our practice here at BRC Imagination Arts, which is the idea that often, and this is a quote, often the perfect moment to give someone more responsibility is before they're ready. So hopefully slightly before. That's a quote from Will Guidra, I think is how I pronounce it. He wrote the book Unreasonable Hospitality. But that's really, that's what it was, thrust into the deep end. And of all the films in Epcot, we were the one that came closest to being on budget. They all went over budget. Ours did too. We were $10,000 over budget at the end.
Oh,
Wow.
that's not bad.
If you had made all those stops in the cafes.
So was there some incident with the helicopter in the Alps and you didn't want to go, or what's going on over there?
No, that wasn't it at all. The helicopter time is always a joy. The camera there weighs that we were shooting with is a circle vision camera with the back cameras removed. So it's a five camera view, but the damn thing still weighed like 450 pounds. The courage of a helicopter pilot is directly related to the lift to weight ratio. If you're going to, and because the director is always saying, please fly lower and closer to the rocks. That's what the director is always saying. So the helicopter was rigged up with a clever little lever on just to one side of the pilot that would give him an instant additional 450 pounds of lift, net lift. But of course, that would mean it was a wrap, because there were only two of those cameras and the other one was in China at the time. And we would gotten to the point where we shot all the stuff on the ground and we were just shooting helicopter shots. And the way that to conserve weight, they would go up with Rick, who was the director and the director of photography, both, plus the pilot, and only 1/8 of a tank of gas to save weight. So there was no room in the helicopter for me. So there wasn't much for me to do other than, yep, the helicopter's taking off now. There it goes. It disappears. Oh, good. It's coming back. That means they didn't die. And then quick, let's, reload them or whatever, send them back. So I get this call from Marty saying, hey, would you like to go to Detroit? And I'm saying, Marty, it's January. I just had dinner on the Champs-Elysees. You want me in January to leave the Champs-Elysees and go to Detroit? Really? And he said there was some stuff to be done for the General Motors Pavilion at Epcot. And he said, unfortunately, we don't have anybody to send from WDI and just you. And so if you go and you fail, I've got no backup. So the only way this will work is if you go independent, work for them independently, start your own company. And talk about a gift. Again, that thing about often the perfect moment to give somebody more responsibility is before they're really ready. This was a chance to start a brand new company where your first project will be then the largest corporation on earth, creating something for a Disney theme park.
Not bad.
Pretty damn good way to start a company.
Yes.
Anyway, so thank you, Marty. Marty Sklar was one of those people. I wish you could have interviewed him on this.
Yeah.
He's one of those people that just touched so many lives in so many talents in a positive way, made so many careers possible by his faith in people, often before they could prove they were worthy of it, me included.
Me included as well. And I always said, Marty had the ability to see more in people than they saw in themselves.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Need more people like that.
Yeah. So it's 1981 and you're in Sherman Oaks.
In a garage.
And BRC is Bob Rogers.
This was BRC's first office.
Yeah.
We shared, my desk was shared space with a late model Toyota and some Christmas decorations in storage. We sent off our first contract to General Motors. And the first paragraph said, General Motors, a corporation incorporated and duly doing business in Delaware, and Rogers and Company, a duly incorporated corporation doing business in California. And they sent back the unchanged contract with a $200,000 advance check.
Nice.
Wow.
And I called our lawyer and went, oh shit, Wayne, we got to register quick, register Rogers and Company. He comes back and says, sorry, there's a company in Bakersfield that already has that name. We'll have to think of something else, but I've got a check made payable to them. We eventually worked it out, but talk about, just sort of starting it on a fake it till you make it kind of basis.
Wow.
But I think that's something that a lot of the people that are tuned into this thing today, a lot of them probably started that way. And it's a common experience.
Wow.
So 1982, one of the shows that you produced for GM was one of my favorites, especially at the time, because I was still an animator, and that was the Bird and Robot Show. And I remember it became a reference point for us in animation, because you took it was an animate object, but an object, a chunk of steel, and gave it personality, made you feel for the robotic arm, which is genius.
This was in order to demonstrate robotics for manufacturing. The story that the mythology that informed people's opinion of robots in factories was that of the science fiction monster. The scientists have created some awful thing that's destroying households by taking good jobs away from good people. And we tried to, this show replaced that with a different mythology, and that is the robot is man's best friend. The robot was cast as the dog in a dog act, and the bird was an animatronic bird taken literally from the spare parts shelves for the tiki house. And to make sure that the everybody sided with and liked the robot, we made the bird a total asshole. Can we say that on the show? He's a real jerk, and as a result, everybody liked the robot. But there were two technical breakthroughs. One of them was the idea that the robot was expressing the robot. We didn't even paint him. We just took the decal of the manufacturer off of him and put him on stage. But just through programming, we made him express emotions. The other thing was, you may have seen in the photograph the little donut in the bottom of the screen. There's a moment in the show where the bird says, "Fetch the donut," and the donut is clearly out of the reach of the robot. And toward the end of the show, and then the bird berates him for that, for not being able to get it. But toward the end of the show, the robot has been conducting an orchestra on the screen behind, and he takes the conductor's baton, puts it through the donut, and that's okay. That's pretty good, and lifts it up. But then he tilts the baton up so that the donut slides freely down the shaft of that thing and against the robot's mouth. At which point, all the people that know anything about robotics take a deep breath and goes, "How's he going to get it back out on the plate?"
Yeah.
It was the first time in any show that anybody used an industrial robot anywhere in the world that we know of. It was also the first time that a robot picked up and put down a truly loose and untethered object.
Wow.
And took it off of whatever pegs that were holding it in place. And by the way, he did do his own reset at the end of the show, and that was, a lot of people thought that was one of the best parts, was watching the robot reset himself.
Wow.
But more importantly, it made you laugh, it made you feel, and it made you think.
Yeah.
Oh, it was fun. It was optimistic. It was fun, and it did change minds. It did change minds. You know, it's hard to, we've had so many cute robots since then, starting with R2-D2, that it's hard to remember a time when robots were automatically evil. But that's what we were faced with at the time.
Yeah. So
now,
over these decades, sorry,
I was going to say that one of the things that came out of that was we had on our agreement with General Motors, the right, any trash, any outtakes that weren't used in that show, there was a screen behind them you saw that had film of robots. We could use that and create our own shows separately, a separate short subject. And in fact, let me talk about this. This is kind of an interesting thing, maybe for some of the people listening today. When we were filming the robots in factories, the director of photography, Reed Smoot, asked me what look we wanted. And I said, light it with red on one side and blue on the other and shadowy in the middle, like a ballet. And he said, that's going to be a little dark. We said, that's fine. That's okay. He says, normally high tech, you light it flat in front of, no, let's do it like a ballet. And so it was some time traveling around before we got our first report from the editor back in LA to how things looked. So, hey, Marshall, how does it look? Well, it's dark. How dark is it? Well, you were going for dark, right? You got it. Is it usable? It is if you like dark. So we're going, oh God, we've screwed up. This is going to be terrible. And it was a very dark moment. We thought we'd put ourselves out of business on our first try. That was our first Oscar nomination.
Wow.
sometimes when you're going through a project and you have one of those dark moments, it means that you actually are trying hard enough. You're stretching the envelope enough that you're actually going to do something that has some originality. We got the same sort of thing on Rainbow War a few years later.
Yeah.
Rainbow War was, we couldn't afford to do the story of Rainbow War as all live action with special, stuff by Lucasfilm, the special effects. We couldn't do that. So we staged the whole thing in a child's pop-up book. And we're wondering if anybody's going to buy this. Is anybody going to believe in this? Is this going to work? And we looked at our first dailies and we're trying desperately to convince ourselves it's going to work. But it kind of, we're thinking, I don't know about this. Yeah. And another dark moment, and this was our second Oscar nomination. So sometimes, again, it's like you need to be stretching the envelope. You need to be trying new things. And sometimes that takes you to scary places, but hopefully you're under enough control that you land on your feet, you plant the landing.
So I started at Imagineering in '87, and my first project in this industry was the Disney-MGM Studios. And you were working with another one of our time travelers, Jerry Reese, on one of my favorite films in that park, Back to Neverland, with Walter Cronkite, Robin Williams, who are no longer with us, unfortunately. Any fun stories about that great project?
Oh, sure. What a pair. Mr. Teleprompter meets Mr. Adlib. I pulled us aside at one point and said, I'm having a problem here. I never know when to come in with my line because I never know when he's finished. And what we said was, well, tell you what you do. Try this. If he's got one sentence, give him one sentence and then come in with your line, no matter what he said. If he's got two sentences, give him two sentences. We said, okay, and that worked. That worked. The other kind of funny thing was Katzenberg got them to be in this thing by calling up Cronkite and saying, Robin has already agreed to do this, and mainly because he's interested in working with you. Oh. And then he called up Robin Williams and said, Cronkite has already agreed to do this because he's interested in working with you.
Good producer.
And got them both to agree to it. And they really were very fascinated with each other.
Yeah.
And throughout the shooting, they sat next to each other. And throughout the whole thing, Robin Williams tried to engage in serious discussions about world events, and Cronkite tried to tell jokes.
Interesting.
Wow.
He told some good ones. There aren't too many people who can tell a personal recollection about what all happened on Eisenhower's plane on D-Day.
Wow.
So he had some interesting stories. But so many of the people that you get to deal with in this business have great stories.
Yeah.
So speaking of stories, you have done writing, you've done directing, you've done producing. What's the thread through all
that? Thinking about the audience, trying to figure out what they need today. You start out by you want to know the audience, know who they are, know what they're already attracted to, know in the context of today, what's going on in their life today. And then you want to disrupt them. You want to take them out of whatever is their ordinary world. They want to plunge them into something else. They take them, most of all, get them to forget they've got this.
Yes.
Cause this to go unused in their pocket, or make it the central thing that makes the whole thing a game. But better still, this is part of their ordinary world.
Yeah.
Take them to an unordinary place. You want to sensualize it. You want to use sight and sound and aroma and touch and taste and temperature, movement. You want to give them goosebumps. You want to emotionalize it. You want to get them to feel very strong emotions that leave them stimulated and stirred up, and more connected to each other and to the world than before. And you most of all want to touch their heart. You want a story that engages people and in the end leads to insights into, they know the world a little bit better, and most of all, they know something about themselves a little bit better. If you can do those things, then you're probably going to have a pretty good presentation. Oh, and it needs to be dazzlingly beautiful, and it needs to have some amazing technology. But from a story point of view, what I just said is a better formula.
Yeah, wow, tall order.
Wow.
So BRC went on to do Space Center Houston and Mystery Lodge, which was Spirit Lodge, and Apollo Saturn V Center, and Steven Spielberg's Motion Picture Magic, and things at Universal Japan, all these amazing brand houses. And were there any favorites or any great stories you want to tell that you haven't told elsewhere?
I think it's just such a privilege to be in this business. Every day, I thank goodness that we're still able to do this. And I'm one of those weirdos that says, "Thank God it's Monday."
Yeah.
So Bob, you recently, and I guess true through a lot of work, was working with brands and understanding brands. And people often see brands as this kind of big, kind of cold and personal thing, but you have a way of understanding brands and connecting them to people. Can you talk a bit about that?
What we've discovered is that whether you're trying to connect people with the life and times of Abraham Lincoln, or connect people with the history and heritage of the Grand Ole Opry or the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or the works of Leonard Bernstein, or whether you're trying to connect people with the heritage and art of Johnny Walker, it really kind of comes down to the same principles of storytelling. You want to, make it be about them. Make it be something that, it's not that different. What is different is all the language. The brands speak in, they have a vocabulary each of those worlds has a vocabulary that's different from the others. You have to learn that for sure. That's the best advice I can give on that.
Yeah.
So speaking of advice,
speaking of advice, so
it's time for the all-important question.
Yeah. So with your 40 plus years of experience working on so many amazing, award-winning, spectacular, life-changing experiences and attractions for people, what would you say, Bob, makes a guest experience timely yet timeless?
Timely and timeless. If by timely you mean it's something that's arriving at the perfect time, it's good timing. That's arrived at the perfect moment. Then what you're really talking about is what are people grappling with in their lives or in their day right now? What are their most immediate feelings, hopes, fears, dreams? What would speak to their heart right now? The great storytellers, after all, speak to us. They don't speak to us. They speak for us. They're trying to tell us the story that we need to hear about right now. It's not about the storyteller. It's about the audience. And those things, as Joe, as you said a moment ago, those things haven't changed since the caves of Lascaux. The styles change. We need to dress up what we're doing in contemporary costumes, and we need to certainly use the latest delivery mechanisms. but deep down, the feelings, hopes, fears, and dreams way down are products of our shared human experience, just what you said, and therefore they don't change. And let me give you a couple examples. We fall in love, we fall out of love. We go through breakups. We sometimes feel lonely. Tell me when we're going to quit being interested in stories and songs about those things.
Right.
It goes on forever. Beauty and the Beast has works on many levels, many different ways. But one of them is that sometimes what we have in common with that story is that sometimes the people we love or that we're supposed to love are acting in ways that are very difficult to love. Damn it.
Yeah.
And Cinderella continues to animate our imagination because, for one thing, for many things, but for one thing, all of us experience sibling rivalry, either in the family or in social groups or forms of sibling rivalry at work, where the boss always liked her best, that kind of thing. Snow White, it still works on so many levels, but one of them is that, yes, when a girl reaches the age where she starts changing from a girl into a young woman, sometimes she starts having trouble with her mother, and Snow White is sort of that problem seen from the point of view of the girl. Young men continue to absurdly and at risk to their lives engage in self-inflicted tests of courage. They get drunk and they go play grab ass on their motorcycle in the desert, and it's very dangerous. But so why couldn't they do the same thing by daring to ride a really challenging coaster? And that sort of is a segue to the biggest thing of all, is that I think we all know that the world is chock full of dangerous stuff. Mm-hmm. It's out there waiting for us in ambush, and all of a sudden something might go terribly wrong, as we like to say in the theme park jargon. There are monsters in the world. There's real evil, and there's real tragedy that could come upon us at any minute. And any story that therapeutically puts us through that sudden terror moment, but reassures us that we are going to be able to defeat it or outrun it, that's very encouraging. So all of those things that are part of that shared human experience of all time, it's like a piano has 88 keys, 88 keys. And every song we've ever known, just about, can be played using those notes have been around forever. And we are constantly, musical people are constantly putting those notes together in new and refreshing ways that seem brand new, but it's the same notes. And so that's what we do as storytellers. We're taking those 88 notes of human experience, we're assembling them in fresh ways, we're dressing them up in contemporary costume, we're giving them dazzling imagery and tons of innovative technical imagination. And we're also making it optimistic and fun. But in the process, the whole time, we're telling their story, not ours. And we're doing that novel orchestration of those 88 keys of shared human experience. But deep down, therefore, I think that maybe the things that are making it timely also make it timeless. So maybe those are just the same thing or two sides of the same thing.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow. Thank you.
That's awesome.
The master class.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So much great advice. And I'm sure we only scratched the surface on, all the other great things you have to offer, but you've left a legacy of amazing projects and continue to create great things around the world.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And you're ready to hit the road?
Becky, send us off.
Bye, guys. We're We're gonna go see some of Bob's projects. Let's go to the World's Fair in '86.
86.
Let's go see Spirit Line. Let's go. All right, we're off. Bye, guys.
All right. And we hope you enjoyed the ride. Thank you so much to our friend Bob Rogers for time traveling with us today. And if you have questions for Bob, stick around for an off-the-record Q&A in just 60 seconds. On behalf of Zeitgeist Design and Production, we thank you for spending an hour of your day with us on the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. If you enjoyed the journey, please check out all 22 of our time travel adventures with industry icons on our YouTube channel or under the Zoomcast section at zeitgeist-usa.com. They're also now available as an audio-only podcast wherever you listen. Please plan now to join us on Friday, April 21st, when our time machine passenger will be a man who divided 40 years almost equally between producing groundbreaking and award-winning live entertainment for Disney and Universal, Mr. Mike Davis. May your tomorrow have the nostalgia of the past, the wonder of the present, and the promise of the future. And stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Get it.